Because of the City Upon a Hill soundbite, a model of Christian charity is one of the formative documents outlining the idea of America. But dig deep into its communitarian ethos, and it reads more like an America that might have been, an America fervently devoted to the quaint goals of working together and getting along. Of course, this America does exist. It's called Canada.
So your book, talks about the founding and the early days of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Can you talk about why you chose to focus on that particular part of American history?
I like the sermons of Puritan Massachusetts. That's really the writing, actually, was what drew me to them in the first place. John Winthrop, in his sermon, A Model of Christian Charity, one of my favorite pieces of writing. And I had been kind of waiting around for a reason to write a book about them. Really, I started working on the book after Ronald Reagan's funeral. I'm guessing you've heard of Reagan in Canada.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yes, just kidding. He's more famous than Canada, I think. At his funeral, he was known for swiping the soundbite from Winthrop's sermon about, New England, and to him, America being a city on a hill. And at his funeral, Sandra Day O'Connor, his Supreme Court nominee, read from Winthrop's sermon as a tribute to Reagan. And the sermon itself is about charity and generosity, Winthrop's sermon, and it always struck me as kind of ironic that was President Reagan's pet catchphrase, since his administration was all about, gutting all of the social programs that were meant to help people in a generous, charitable manner. And it just seemed like worth, airing my personal grudge with that legacy, I guess. I don't know if you've ever noticed that in Canada, how the United States sort of thinks it's this nation that's ordained by God and better than all others, than that other nations are to emulate.
I think you guys tried to invade us once or twice. Yeah, so we remember that.
Right.
Not personally.
Apparently you think you won the War of 1812 too, which is whatever. So there's that. The seal of the Massachusetts Bay Colony is a picture of an Indian saying, "Come over and help us." And that was kind of, they thought of themselves as inherently helpful. And I think Americans inherited that from them as well, the idea that, we're here to help whether you want our help or not. And it seems like this sort of self-esteem, let's call it, on the part of New England and then the United States, it's really difficult to escape and gets us into trouble, I think.
I mean, I've read some of your other work, and I know that you definitely like to explore this, Americanism or the Americanness, like qualities that make Americans and America what it is. Mm-hmm. Why are you so drawn to that in your work?
I think part of it is the inherent dramatic contradictions within American history, especially the ideals that came after the Puritans and the Revolutionary generation and the founding documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and how there are these big, beautiful ideals about freedom and equality, and yet the country itself, and in particular the government, doesn't always live up to those ideals. But there's also this lighthearted quality to the country as well, and there's a kind of disconnect there. The American writer Steve Erickson says that the two things America is good at are annihilation and fun, and that disconnect is constant fodder for me. And I'm specifically interested in words. I mean, and I'm always interested in what we as Americans say about ourselves versus what we actually do. And there's irony there, and there's also humor. There's something inherently humorous or at least ironic about a country that talks up its ideals and the idea of itself as, you know, the inherently greatest of all nations when, you know, constantly it's like literally a battlefield most of the time. I mean, for a place with such high ideals, there's a pretty high body count.
There's been some really interesting wordplay going on in this election. Well, specifically, the McCain campaign's attempt to really kind of paint this us versus them picture of the real America versus the fake America.
Yeah.
Oh, any thoughts about that? I guess you live and work in fake America, so.
Well, I was born in real America. Literally, I was born in Okie, from Muskogee, which is a Merle Haggard song, so it doesn't get much more real America than that. But I do live in New York City, the apparent fake America. And as a citizen of New York City, I find all of that rhetoric incredibly offensive, especially when members of the Republican Party in general and John McCain and Sarah Palin in particular come to New York. And, you know, she came to New York on the anniversary of 9/11 and you know, seeps herself in the, you know, violence of that attack and talks about, you know, about how the possible McCain administration is about, you know, preventing that from ever happening again. And then, you know, then she leaves and then goes somewhere else and talks about the real America, and that you're only a real American if you live in a small town somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I find incredibly disgusting because I feel like that New York City was, and that the East Coast in general was American enough for Al-Qaeda to attack. So it should be American enough for the Republican presidential candidates, you know? I mean, that kind of talk is incredibly offensive, and it's probably racist, and it is destructive and divisive, and it makes me obviously just insane.
Now, you know, with elections winding down and with this book out of the way, what are you working on next?
My next book actually might be a history of Hawaii from European contact on. It will actually kind of be a sequel to my Puritans book in that in the 19th century, Hawaii is almost a suburb of Boston, and you have these Massachusetts missionaries who are the descendants of the original Puritan Congregationalists who settle Hawaii and basically try to turn it into Massachusetts. With, you know, Hawaii is littered with Congregationalist meeting houses where you feel like you've flown 10 hours from the East Coast to get there, and you're suddenly back in Massachusetts. And then also the whalers from Massachusetts. So it is kind of like the descendant of these people and their two strains, the sort of adventuring, seafaring side of them, and then the, you know, churchy, do-gooder, proper side of Massachusetts really is kind of played out in 19th century Hawaii.